bro, but that's not a good thing though. That's not like a.
The point is that he can apply something that he never mind. Rex started.
Yeah, I'm ready. It's just Shika Aizen versus Yama FKT. Do you want to go first? Or you want me to just go first?
I'll go first.
Okay.
Where'd I send scans?
You can send a VC chat or scroll down. There should be a scans chat. Oh, scroll
There's
up.
no scan. There's a media chat.
I thought there was a scans chat. Whatever. Yeah, just send it in media.
Okay. Let me see. All right. Sent the scan. Aizen was stronger than anyone else, and because of this, he was lonely and misunderstood by everyone. This would just be This would just be saying he's stronger than Yama or stronger than any relevant person.
Okay. Well, how do you posit reconciliation with any other statement in regards to Yama's strength?
Like what?
Like the statement that says Aizen is no match for him, and the fact that Aizen literally says that he's the ultimate. How do you reconcile with that?
The statement that says Aizen is no match for him is just not just repeating what it's just like clarifying what Yama means in the panel. I think it's just restating it, saying what it means. And the other statement,
Yeah, prove that.
what was the other statement? What was the other statement you said?
The other statement is the fact that he says that you have the strongest Zanpakuto and even the ultimate can be opposed.
The strongest Zanpakuto. I mean, it's just referring to his destructive capacity. We've seen that multiple times. That because it's the most consistent interpretation, and I believe that
why?
I'm explaining. I believe it's the most consistent because Aizen later in the same arc, FKT, after Yama is defeated, he says his powers were unequaled in the Soul Society. He believed that he was the strongest at the time. I think it would be the most narratively.
Okay, hold up. But the entire premise I'm asking you is how do you reconcile with X statement? You say the way to reconcile with X statement is referencing destructive capacity, but that's a correlation. I don't see how is it a just reason for the reconciliation. Reconciliation is when you're trying to adjust two statements to be mutually inclusive. There is no equally just metric where I can say this is destructive capacity. It's equally as I can say this is something else, and this is usurped by the statement with Aizen referencing a mental capacity of strength that's not indexed to reality, given the fact that this narrative is consistently hypocrisy.
I've already explained why it is a justification. I already explained how you can reconcile it because you can interpret it a certain way to be it's most consistent and what it's the most narratively implied.
You didn't defeat how I said reconciliation worked. You just repeat. Okay. Do you remember what I said? How reconciliation worked?
You said, "Oh no, okay. What is it then?"
Okay, yeah. So like I was saying, I know you didn't remember. Is to make so then repeat it.
There's no point. Just go for it.
Okay, exactly. So like I was saying, it's the fact that reconciliation is making two statements mutually inclusive for a just reason. If we just apply any if we apply,
what do you think
somebody's mic is echoing.
I got it.
Listen, somebody's mic was that's why I stopped. I'm gonna repeat myself. When you're reconciling something, right, you're making mutual inclusivity regarding a consistent conclusion. And for that to be the case, if we're just going to use an abstract and arbitrary method to say, well, this interpretation allows us
why
to
is it abstract or arbitrary?
Okay, listen, I said if we use the metric of it being abstract or arbitrary, as in there is no formal or informal credence in regards to the way you were able to reconcile. So, for example, I can say that I interpret the Eisen statement as this is referencing a mental fortitude. He was stronger than everybody else, right? But there wouldn't be any type of formal or informal basis in regards to evidence or deductive argument, right? But that's technically reconciliation. So if we apply that metric universally,
to be clear, you're going on like a weird tangent. To be clear, I've already reconciled why it's a very specific thing with extra evidence within the manga. I told you why. What's it called?
You just gave me a correlation.
No. I gave you a reason. I gave you an interpretation for the Yama scan that you sent.
Okay, what do you mean? Do you just mean interpretation by view, or do you mean interpretation by just explain?
An interpretation of what the statement means.
I asked you what you meant, bro. I asked you what you meant. Do you mean an explanation, or do you just mean a view upon something?
An explanation.
Okay, yeah. And do you think that explanations have to be contingent upon either type of deductive argument in regards to it being 100% true, or at least the abductive case in a comparison of evidence, or an inference case in regards to just the induction of something?
I don't think it matters whether something is 100% true or not. I think it's just as long as it's justified or likely to be the case.
Okay, so we're referencing.
I gave you why.
So we're referencing, like I said. So then that's why I named the other two. I said we would either be giving abductive reasoning or inductive reasoning. And in regards to that, with inductive reasoning, it would have to be a consistent case of showing that along with the specific thing that entails the conclusion being general, right? But correlations. Wait a minute. Correlations do not entail necessarily the conclusion. Just a correlation is just a relation to the conclusion, right? And there was no comparison of evidence for you to give an abductive argument. So I don't think any type of credence you gave warrants an explanation.
To be clear, I don't think correlations don't necessarily have to entail a conclusion, but
that's exactly what I just said.
I know, and I'm agreeing with that, right? But that nobody's trying to make an argument with that. I'm trying to establish a likelihood, not only with the way Yama goes about the fight, where he tries to kill himself at first. He doesn't try to attack Aizen, doesn't try to go Bankai, but I'm also using a different statement by Aizen to say why this is likely just in reference to strength.
Yeah, no, you've already been doing that. So I'm gonna just rephrase it in case you don't understand, and then I'm going to give another argument, and then I'm going to end up sending scams. So, like I was saying, regarding an explanation, right? It's usually just a just reason given for X, whether it be a proposition or just be a question. And with that being the case, if we're referencing just, it can either be formally deductive, and then we're referencing three different types of reasoning we have. We have deductive, right? We just like basically process of elimination. Then we have the idea of abductive reasoning, a comparison of evidence, which we've yet to compare. You've not done that, right? And then
I've literally
an
compared
inductive
evidence, but
argument.
okay.
And wait, listen, an inductive argument in regards to this is consistently shown to be the case. Therefore, we make a general statement. But correlations do not prove that because it does not entail a conclusion necessarily, which you've yet to explain one specific
Correlation.
example whatsoever.
So you kind of just haven't addressed what I said. Correlations don't have to necessarily entail something, but they can lead to a likelihood of something being the case. I think that it's likely. Wait, stop. I think it's likely.
That's not a just
Wait,
explanation.
stop.
That's-
No, this. But
You're
wait,
just hedging
wait,
at this
stop.
point.
No,
You're just
no,
hedging because
no.
you just said that
Let me finish.
the
Let me
correlation
finish.
could warrant possibility.
finish.
A possibility, you automatically discern the fact that you're proving probability. If you're just saying it warrants possibility, I don't care.
No, because when you establish an interpretation for something, that is necessarily saying this is a possibility. But then when you further justify that interpretation, you're saying why this is a probability.
Well, that's
I'm saying-
irrelevant
wait, no,
because we
let
just
me
used two
finish what I
different
was saying earlier.
definitions. The definition of interpretation that you gave was we were going under the notion of its explanation of something, specifically just explanation, because just any type of arbitrary explanation is just trivially true if we're going to go to that definition. But we agreed upon that the idea is a just explanation. But you said that an interpretation posits something is possible, but under that regard, that is interpretation under just regards to the definition of perception rather than a just explanation. Because just explanations wouldn't seemingly just be possible anymore if we're referencing the two forms of inference we're ruling out besides deductive reasoning.
I think what you just said is almost inherently just like not relevant to what we're talking about.
That's not an argument, bro.
Yeah,
Do you even know what inherent means?
Yes, it's something fundamental, something intrinsic.
Yeah, how is what I said
or
fundamentally not relevant
it
if we're talking about an explanation and interpretation?
It was a bit of an exaggeration. We're not getting stuck
Okay,
on
so
a point.
it's not an exaggeration.
It's not relevant. It's not relevant. No.
Okay, yeah, exactly. I knew it wasn't relevant.
When
That's
I
why I said it
clearly
wasn't an
defined a
argument.
word, then I know what that word means, dumbass. I just know how it's an
You
exaggeration.
just didn't use the word correctly. So
I don't care. I don't care. It's not my fault you don't understand exaggerations.
Bro,
But as I was saying,
that
we're not
wasn't
getting stuck up on
exaggeration.
this.
You didn't use the word correctly.
We're not getting stuck up on this. We're not getting stuck up on this. So as I was saying, I think your whole nonsense or jargon with correlation and inductive and abductive arguments is completely irrelevant to establishing likelihoods. No one's trying to say any 100% affirmative. I think
I never said anything about 100% now.
Yes, you did. You did. You said correlations don't. Yes, you did.
Okay, bro. I don't think you understand what I'm saying.
I'm saying,
do you understand what I said in regards to a correlation? Is I specifically said that if you were going to give an inductive or abductive argument, right, an abductive is a comparison of evidence, right? You are not necessarily positing just the idea of a correlation regarding just the comparison of evidence, right? Specifically, credence in this case, in regards to it being a levying argument, or that's deductively true, or just being concrete evidence in regards to it's empirically true. Now, in regards to induction, right, if you're just going to use a simple correlation, induction entails a general conclusion from a given set of data, but correlations do not necessarily do that. Thus, that's why I said in this specific example, could you prove to me and give an argument as why this correlation of this case would lead to the conclusion if you're giving an inductive argument, right? Because you didn't compare evidence, so I know it's not abductive.
It would have to lead to this conclusion since I'm giving a non-contradictory stance on how both of these
things. That's
how,
just an appeal to possibility. What the fuck? You literally just said discuss something is mutually inclusive. It's just going to be true. That shit is fucking retarded. Holy shit. You literally just said you gave something that's not contradictory, therefore it leads to your conclusion. That's literally just positing.
That's not what I said. That's not what I said. That's not what I said.
You don't know what you're talking about.
You can't track. So what I said.
This guy is dumb.
You can't track Tensei. This is how arguments work. When you give a separate interpretation, usually to go against something that may seemingly be contradictory, you're trying to establish a non-contradictory. That is establishing a possibility.
Okay, that's not all that you said.
Stop. That's not it. You don't know what I'm about to say. What am I about to say? 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 What was I about to say?
Bro, listen, I don't give a fuck.
Can you tell me what? No. Answer the question. What was I about to say?
Bro, did you listen to what I just said?
What was I about to say?
I answered your question. I said I don't give a fuck what you were about to say because I disagree with
you. You don't know what I was about to say. If you don't know what I was about to say, then shut the fuck up. You don't know.
No, because I disagree with what you said now. So I disagree now, and I voiced what I wanted to say now. The fuck?
Because if you don't understand a full point fully, you're likely not to address it
Okay,
fully.
if I
dummy.
disagree with the first premise that's laid out in regards to you made a proposition, it is either true or false. If I disagree
You
with
can,
your argument or just the proposition itself,
considering that
if
you
you're saying it's
haven't
true,
made a
then I can
proper
interject.
rebuttal to what I said, I'm gonna let you like try to make a rebuttal. But if it's just
Okay,
off
hold on,
topic, I'm gonna
listen.
interrupt.
Like I
Go for it.
said, and I repeated it twice, and you're repeating yourself, and you haven't addressed
Not
it.
repeating
Is if
that.
you say something that is either true or false, and I disagree with the way you're able not only to decide if that is true, but it's just being one of those two things in regards to just the entirety of the narrative we're referring to, then I can enter whatever the fuck I want. I don't need to know your argument in
I
the future.
agree.
If I already disagree with what you're
You can.
defending in the first place.
I
Right. So, but
agree.
like I was
Wait,
saying,
stop.
I was saying that
Sensei.
the entire idea of likelihood is beyond possibility. It is a spectrum in which we indicate likeliness. And with regards to that, you bringing up possibility is completely irrelevant. If we already agreed, it would be trivially true that everything would be possible if we're just giving an interpretation that can just be arbitrarily reconciling with any type of evidence we have inside the series.
I think it's a severe tracking issue. Since I don't think bringing up a possibility is almost inherently flawed because
I never
if you
said
no,
that.
stop.
I never said that. I never said it was inherently flawed. You
Let
just
me
keep saying
finish what I'm about
bullshit.
to
What the
say.
fuck?
Let me finish what
No
I'm about
one
to say.
said it inherently flawed, bro.
Ironic jargon merchant. Anyways, as
It's
I
not
was
a
saying,
jargon merchant. You just don't know how to fucking
because what
argument
I'm not
works. You're
doing, no,
just
because what
saying
I'm
shit.
doing, no, because you don't know how an argument works. Because I'm not bringing up a possibility. I'm bringing up
You
a
just brought up a
probability in the
possibility, my
current
nigga.
form of the
All you did
argument.
was bring up
I'm
mutual
not. No,
inclusivity.
that's not true. That's not true. And then
Is
wait,
mutual
what do you think I did?
inclusivity not
I have a
dispositively a
question. What do you
possibility?
think? What do you think I did after? What do you think I did
Okay, hold
after?
on. Listen, what
No,
did
what do
I?
you think I
You're not
did
about
after?
to answer my question with the question. The fuck?
No, I know. I never
You
answered
either
your
do not
question. I
answer
said the
mine, and I
question
do not
first.
answer
I said
yours,
the
or
answer.
you answer mine, and then I answer
I said the
yours.
question first. Okay, what were
Okay,
you saying,
no, you
Sensei?
didn't. But I don't give
I
a
did.
fuck. Okay, well, I don't give a shit then. Like I said, if
Go
I
for it.
don't have to answer any of the questions you have. I can continue the debate, giving an argument and saying it is true. I asked you a question out of like to come to
Make
an
you look
agreement
dumb.
immediately. But if I have to, I can just give an argument. And I asked it first. I'm not going to do this bullshit with you, my nigga.
I asked
So you
it
either answer
first,
my
but
shit or I
whatever.
don't answer your. Okay, well then I
What
don't give a
was your
shit then.
question?
So then
What was your
okay,
question?
exactly.
Well, then I don't
Exactly.
give a shit. What?
Okay. Well, then that's fine. That's fine. Exactly. So I'm gonna compare the evidence like I said I was going to do in the first place, right? So the three statements I want to be in reference to was the statement that he's no match for him, that he's the ultimate, right? And then the verbatim statement that he's the strongest. I think that if we're going to use abductive reasoning, a Yamamoto statement would just take credence over the one statement Aizen has.
I think Aizen has a plethora of other statements that are also implied by Yamamoto's actions. For example, Yamamoto, when in his fight, the first thing he does isn't just try to box him up or kill him or go Bankai. He tries to kill himself. Yamamoto thinks that killing himself is the best form of action to fight against Aizen.
Prove that. What the fuck? And reminder, address the previous
That's
arguments I'll show, because just because I'm giving another argument
the
right now does
previous.
not mean I'm staying on the previous. I'm not like leaving from the previous point. We are arguing
Wait,
simultaneously.
okay. We're not going to talk about your Yama scans until we're done with that. Then. So
Well,
what?
no, we can talk about it however way I want.
No.
Y'all
I'm
not gonna
okay.
sit
I'm
here
okay.
and act
I'm
like
not. We're not gonna. We're not
I'm
gonna.
not
We're
gonna
not
stay
gonna
here just
go.
on one
We're
point for
not gonna go on a
30,000
billion
hours, my
points.
nigga. I'm gonna give as many
We're not going to
arguments as
stay
I
on
need
that point for
necessary.
30,000 hours. We barely stayed on that point for 5 minutes. Let's stay on
Okay,
it
yeah,
for a
and
little
I'm not
longer.
about to
Then,
do
if you
it
think.
any longer than another 15. So, like I said, I'm going to
I
progress
don't
the
care.
debate by giving other
I'll
scans and
agree.
giving different arguments.
Wait. I'll agree. I don't want to be on that point for 15
Okay,
fucking
yeah,
minutes.
that's
At least
irrelevant.
for a
I
little bit
said that
longer.
we're not going to be
Anyways,
on that point too long. It doesn't matter what you agreed to. I was
I'll
telling you
agree.
that
I'll
I'm giving
agree.
multiple arguments now, right? I
I'll
gave the
agree.
adductive argument for
We're not.
Yama, and then
We're
we're talking
gonna.
about the interpretation for him.
We're not gonna go onto your arguments. We're not gonna progress until we've
Well,
gotten
you
past this
can't
at least
say
for a
that,
few
nigga.
minutes.
That's what you're
Yes,
going
I
to be
can.
doing.
Yes,
That's what
I
you're going to
can.
be doing.
Yes, I can.
Okay, but
Because
I'm not doing it. You are.
no,
We're not
because
doing
these
shit.
statements. Because that argument is almost fundamental to addressing these arguments, dummy.
No, they're not. What are you
Yes,
talking
it
about?
is.
All I need to
For
establish
example, I'll
my
give. Do you want,
Yamamoto
you want
point
me to?
is
You
regards
want
to
me
the
to?
abstract reasoning, right?
I'll
The
tell
only
you
thing that
why.
you said was just that the best method that Yamamoto thought that was optimal in regards to killing Aizen was suicide. Right? There's a completely
Right?
different argument in regards to this is a refutation to what
I
I am
think
now saying.
it leads credence to the idea that Aizen surpasses him, especially since Aizen himself later says to Kisuke that his powers were unsurpassed in the Soul Society. He
Okay,
says it in the scan you sent.
okay, hold on.
Wait, no,
But
it was
regards into powers, right? What I keep telling you is that the narrative in regards to Aizen's hypocrisy, for example, he says he is no match from anybody in the Soul Society and his powers are not equal, right? The Gin statement says that nobody can stop Aizen, blah, blah, blah. All of those are personal accounts in regards to a character strength, right? Either somebody that is supposed to be deceptive or it's a character that makes a statement himself. In regards to Yamamoto, we are automatically indenting it to a higher order of regards to statements and validity because all the statements I sent, if I'm not mistaken, besides actually all the statements, but all those statements are not even just accounts of Yamamoto. All of them are external accounts, Right, so I would attribute more validity given an outside source, lessening the bias, and it doesn't have to continue further narrative regards to Aizen.
I think like the narrative would definitely imply that Aizen's the strongest. Like what Ichigo's thing, like his clash with him, like talks about his loneliness, how he experienced that loneliness because of his strength. That would be undermined if he wasn't actually
Okay, so
stronger than Aizen.
like I said,
No,
I
no,
addressed
no,
it
no. And then
already.
to address that,
I
since
said that
you get
to
to make
address
multiple
the
arguments,
loneliness
you get
point.
to make
I
no,
said
no,
that the
no. Shut up, shut
loneliness
up, shut
point
up,
does
shut
not
up. I'm gonna
necessarily
address
have
you.
to
I'm
be
gonna
projected
address
onto
everything else you
reality.
said. You're not
If
gonna
not,
shotgun a billion
fundamentally does
points.
not have a
You're not gonna
correlation to
shotgun a
reality
billion points. You're
because
not
as
gonna
long as he
shotgun a
perceives
billion
himself
points.
as the
You're not
strongest,
gonna
there will be
shotgun a billion
self-isolation.
points.
So that's completely
I'm
irrelevant.
gonna continue with what I'm saying, and
Okay,
what you just said can go in the gutter. It's not
but
at
you
all
can't.
consequential.
Bro, it doesn't fucking
Yes,
matter.
you
Just
can.
to interrupt you, which I said goes in
When
the
you can
gutter,
make
my
a
nigga.
billion, when you can make a billion points, I'm gonna have to respond to those
I'm
points.
literally made 3 points this
And
entire.
these
There's been
statements,
3 points, my nigga.
and these statements, I've already gave you a counter interpretation backed by evidence for this first
You
statement.
never addressed what
Irrelevant.
I just
Up
said.
and then, well, because what you just said is irrelevant. So what I'm
Okay, how is
and
it irrelevant? Repeat what I said.
and then to continue, and then to continue,
Repeat what I
and then
said.
to
How is it
continue,
irrelevant?
your second scan that you sent is just that he was given the title of strongest Shinigami. I think this leads credence to that this isn't some objective out of series thing. This is
Okay,
just
bro,
what
this
he's
this
known
guy's
as,
retarded.
if in verse. And it stated in the same scan that because of his title, because of his notoriety, this is why Aizen created Wonder Weiss. Now you can
Okay.
respond.
Okay, bro, this guy's retarded. So first of all, it does not
Can't
say.
track.
Actually, let's go all the way back, right? I already addressed the idea of the loneliness. I said that the only sufficient criteria that is needed is the fact that if he perceives himself as the strongest, the loneliness comes from his own
I've already
mentality.
addressed that.
Not wait, listen, not that reality itself forces Aizen to be lonely, right? As far as we understand, this is indexing to his mind and to his emotions. And all that is needed for him to feel that loneliness is the perception of him being the strongest. So not only does it not necessarily have to correlate when referencing is this demonstrably the case, is this subjective, all that is needed is given the fact that it's just not correlational in regards to the loneliness narrative that I've already explained to you, which you've not addressed. Then the
I've
statement in
already
regards
addressed
to
that.
him being wary to Yamamoto, it says that he is wary of Yamamoto who possessed X and was given the title. If it is given the title, right, if it is a self-proclaimed title, that is not going to be a validly given title, nor would it even be an alias by definition in regards to a general character's knowledge, especially other
Never
since we
said it
have
was
other
given by himself.
later on, given the fact that they give more of an intersubjective interpretation. These arguments are not similar to Aizen because Aizen doesn't have consistency in regards to an objective interpretation that is meant for a narrative of clarity, independent from a character's mind or perception of
I think
emotions. Then the
so.
statement with Aizen also proves the intersubjective notion because then he repeats the notion of the ultimate being applicable to Yamamoto.
So, okay, to respond to everything you said three things, main three things. So the statement about Aizen being stronger than anyone else isn't just a perception. It is stated outright to be an like out of source, out of series thing. And I also think interpreting it to be like, oh, he just perceives himself to be the case. It's not actually the case. Undermines the narrative of his character and his battles with Ichigo. It would be a lot more narratively compelling if he actually was that strong. For the other scan with Wonder Weiss. I've never said it was like a self-proclaimed or self-given title. He was just given the title of the strongest by whoever, doesn't matter who. He's just perceived to be that level, and that's why he created Wonder Weiss, not because of an actual threat level, because of his perception. And I think this is likelier to be the case because, again, after this final panel of Aizen, where he says, if we went to toe-to-toe, you would probably win, he later takes that back and says his strength was unequaled in the Soul Society.
Okay, bro. So first of all, you just not giving any type of valid argument, my nigga. So the
Yeah.
first thing you said is, do you feel like that if it's just a notion? First of all, you just strawman the shit out of me. Actually, what I said is in regards to the truth value of the statement being indexed to reality of him being the strongest character. Nobody is saying that is only right from just his somehow distorted mental that he's trying to deploy from reality. I'm saying that the notion that his loneliness grants credence to that is fundamentally non-correlational, given the fact that the loneliness sufficient condition is the notion that he's just deploying his mental state to reality, which does not have to be one-to-one, right? That's the entire premise. Like I said, it's not like reality is fundamentally forcing Aizen to make himself feel lonely, right? It's a feeling that's deployed from his own perception and his mental state. Now, that's why I keep saying the loneliness narrative does not prove anything. Now, in regards to the notion that, oh, his narrative would be underwhelming or it would be worse if it is not indexed to reality, there's no justification for that. You just said that, and you said that it undermines his narrative. I can equally deploy something opposite, and I could personally say, given this consistent narrative of hypocrisy and not relying on others, right, not relying on the interpretation of others and their strength, I could say I feel like it's more narratively compelling for his character if it is not contingent upon reality, and if it is just him deploying his distorted mental onto other characters that they somehow believe, right? And what I was saying was that the comparison between Aizen's statements and others is that all Aizen's statements are self-proclaimed. If I seemingly just question Aizen's ability to deploy a truth claim onto reality, the entire argument falls apart. Besides this one scan, which is not as consistent as Yamamoto scans, which are external sources that are not only trying to further a convoluted narrative that we seem to be disagreeing on because you didn't give a previous reason, it also, like I said, cannot be fundamentally questioned in regards to the universality of the truth because they are made from different sources. And the intersubjective notion provides more credence to this being consistent. Because if that is the case, there would be more accounts of him being the strongest than Aizen. If it is generally considered the case that he's the strongest Soul Reaper, which is also stated at the Thousand Blood War website, he's the pinnacle of all Shinigami, right? If that is the case, more minds perceive this to be the case. Thus, it would still be consistent beyond the statements I just said.
Okay, so the reason it would be underwhelming. Actually, before I get into that, my position is that this statement is external to the manga. It is external to its perception. It is just proclaiming Aizen was stronger than anybody else. And why I do think it would be underwhelming is because it would make his goals in what he wants to do in reforming the world, fusing with the Hogoku, making a Hogoku, all that would be under a wrong perception or idea. It would be almost inherently less valuable because he would be doing all of this for a falsehood, which is never implied to be a narrative plot point. So saying a possibility for why it would be better, irrelevant. And for the Yama thing, none of these statements are external. You keep saying external. No, he was given an internal, in the story, in universe title of the strongest Shinigami, and I believe all other Yama statements are likely just like extended off of that. For example, where Yama says he hasn't been surpassed in 1,000 years, that's likely just extrapolated from his title that he was given.
Okay, how is that likely extrapolated from the time? First of all, that's not what extrapolation means. Extrapolation is literally just saying assuming based off of previous trends. You're assuming with no basis if you're saying extrapolation. First of all, you don't know what that word means. Second of all, oh no, you don't.
Wait, all extrapolating means in the context of what I'm using it is like extending the application of something.
Okay, yeah, but extending the application of something can be either going to be an inference or assumption. By definition, it's assumption, therefore it's baseless. I'm saying you don't know what it means. I know what you're trying to say, right? You're just fucking dumb because you don't know what the words you're using is, right?
Yeah,
but anyways, okay, yeah. So first of all, the internal external part, I'm referencing it being internal in the series. Obviously, I'm saying external disaccounting just for one singular mind, right? That's the entire point when I'm referencing internal external. And then the last thing I want to ask you to do, because you didn't address 70% of what I said, probably even 80 or 90% to be honest, right? Can you prove to me that this statement is seemingly just a reiteration of the statement that he makes in the manga? Because it's just a correlation. It doesn't prove anything, right? And if you're referencing the notion of consistency, right, I do not think consistency is simply just repetition, right? And if it's a seeming repetition, as in somebody just perceived to be a repetition, if I just say it's not a repetition just because it has the same narrative, or you would have no refutation to that. So can you answer my question?
The reason why this statement would likely just be an explanation on the scan would be like because it repeats what Yama says and then it goes on to clarify what he means by that. I think that would be a far more consistent interpretation based off like all the evidence I've given so far.
Okay, well, we're already questioning the notion of consistency, so that's irrelevant. I don't even know why you repeated that for evidence. And second of all, just because it's followed by what he said, can you prove to me, like I said, that this would be referencing it in regards to this statement is simply just a reiteration, right? This you're just reiterating what he's saying. How do you know that? Just because they make a separate claim attached to what he said.
I think I've already addressed this. We can move
Okay,
on.
so we can go to conclusions then. You want to conclude the whole debate?
Up to you.
Okay, yeah, we can conclude the whole debate because you didn't interact. You want to go first? Yeah, you want to go first. Yeah.
Nah, you go first.
Okay, so yeah, this guy sucks, by the way. Okay, watch this. Let's go to media.
Jargon demon.
So, okay, first thing we have to understand is that this guy does not know what the fucking argument is, right? In regards to the three different types of ways we're going to be referencing an argument, and specifically a credence levying argument, in regards to this thing is likely to be true in comparison to something else, right? And the something else in this case would be the antithesis of the claim that he is making, right? And in this regard, the antithesis of that is Yamamoto is stronger than Aizen in terms of base. Now, for him to say that his initial proposition is true in regards to either has more explanatory power or is definitively the case. He openly said it's not definitively the case. Deductive arguments prove that to be the case. So he's not using a deductive argument. So he's either referencing an inductive or abductive argument. But an abductive argument is a comparison of evidence and ruling out one to be over the other. And I say that if we're doing just a comparison of evidence of simply how many times do they reiterate the notion of Aizen being weaker than Yamamoto, regardless of a character's notion of that. Because I said that if I simply just question the fundamental basis of Aizen's validity, if him being able to deploy his mental state into reality in regards to his belief that he's the strongest, the entire argument falls apart besides one statement, which is like literally quantitatively and qualitatively less, because then like we were understanding they're referencing the loneliness as credence, which does not necessarily prove the entire point. And I said that can reference powers as regards to the mental power or fortitude. So Aizen making majority of the statements, if not all of them, be contingent upon Aizen's perception, fundamentally is not going to be as resourceful, because simply questioning Aizen crumbles the entire narrative. If we were to reference the different statements, we did not attack the consideration of him being the pinnacle of Shinigami, if it being an intersubjective notion beyond himself, and Aizen proving this to be the case, there would not only be more accounts, but literally more people vouching for this to be the case, independent of Yamamoto's interpretation. Therefore, regardless of how many things we question, if Yamamoto's true or the data book is true, there would still be other accounts that are seemingly quantitatively and qualitatively more consistent in regards to Yamamoto being the strongest, given the fact that characters have knowledge of these characters. Now, in regards to that, he can also not be giving an inductive argument, because all he did was just prove the notion that an interpretation under the definition is seemingly just a perception is mutually inclusive. Mutual inclusivity, which he's trying to prove proves his point, does not do anything, because all it does is prove possibility. If it's possible, therefore it's true, is by definition built a possibility fallacy what he committed, right? In regards to that too, he does not understand what I mean by internal and external. All that is relevant is the fact that if the title is given external to the character's perception in their mind, right, it would be more consistent too if multiple characters vouch for this. Aizen does not have that same sufficient criteria. The sufficient criteria that Aizen has, all that is needed for Aizen there to be consistent is if I interpret his narrative to be hypocrisy and not relying upon others, his misconception of that, and then the statements of him being the strongest being a reiteration of his misconception, right? There was no other argument that triumphed what I said, especially given the lack of credence and him not even addressing what I said in my argument in regards to any one of the three forms of reasoning we established previously.
Before I give my conclusion, do you want to like what's it called? Like, do you want to just make this a conclusion for like strength or anything, or just the debate as whole?
This is the debate as a whole if Aizen is weaker or stronger than Yamamoto.
Well, because I still think Aizen could win outside of this.
Well, I don't care.
You want to go into that or no?
Bro, I really don't care. I'm just arguing Yama's stronger than Aizen. I don't care who wins.
I did say this was Aizen versus Yama, not just a strength thing.
Yeah, I know, but versus is a comparison. Like versus can either be referencing a battle or it can be referencing a comparison.
Yeah, I was referencing a battle.
Well, yeah,
Generally, it is a battle. So
well, I don't. That's just the way you interpret it, bro. That I don't interpret.
Yeah, that is the way I interpret it, but that's also generally how most people interpret it. That's why
you're never proving that, gang. When I hear versus, a lot of people. And reminder, versus is a word beyond debates too. Versus can also typically just means a comparison of. Right? Should I have pizza versus tacos? I'm not debating which one's better. I'm just asking which one should I prefer the most.
Obviously, context matters, but in the context of a fictional topic, it's usually, especially power scaling, it's usually like comparing stats.
Yo, can we stop fucking debating over the premise and get to the conclusion?
You're right.
He can't give a conclusion.
I'll give a conclusion, and you're dumb. So, anyways, I gave a statement. He gave a counter to that statement. I interpreted the statement one way, and it gave evidence to why it is probably the case that this statement means a certain conclusion, which would be non-contradictory, because he was trying to propose a contradiction or propose why my statement would be incorrect. This statement is external to the manga. I don't think it has to be Aizen's perception. It would also underwhelm the narrative of the series if it was just Aizen's perception. I definitely back that up for why. It would mean all of his like foundational ideas would be backed up on a lie. It would underwhelm Ichigo's feelings on the topic. I don't think Tensei, Tensei then gave a scan for Yama. I think the scan just, like, if anything, debunks himself, because he kept talking about how it's external. It's not external. It talks about how he was given a title of Shinigami, how he is perceived to be a title of to be a certain level of strength. I don't think Aizen not being perceived at this level really matters, because Aizen's strength was like unknown until I don't think Aizen's strength was ever really known throughout even after the Soul Society and even most of XKT. I don't think he really addressed anything. Actually, it's kind of just jargon. Oh yeah, Aizen takes back this last statement too. It's whatever. That's all I gotta say. Instead, do you want to like? Oh, he's fucking deafened.
You guys even like agree to a judge?
No.
Well,
I didn't know I didn't even plan on like giving conclusions or whatever. I was just planning on just ending the argument.
Just saying, like, I don't know if there was a need for conclusions if you don't.
That's
have
what I was
judge.
Or thinking, I guess. But
maybe you could have like mention that and save everyone some fucking time.
Tensei would probably just want to do it anyways. Tensei, do you want to talk about like Kyoka stuff?
What Kyoka stuff?
I think Kyoka would just like give Aizen the win in this battle.
I said I don't care.
You don't? Do you disagree or not?
Yes, I do disagree, but I don't care.
Let's talk about it then.
Are you retarded?
Well, let's just talk about it, man. Come on.